So let's go back. I mentioned it in the intro, this move away from paid employment and to start a business and bet on yourself. What made you do it?
Well, I'm going to say a dirty word now.
Mm-hmm.
COVID.
Okay.
COVID happened, basically.
Yeah.
So after my second maternity leave, I was on SMP for both of mine. So I didn't have anything to go back. I didn't have any pullback to my previous employer. So they were in London. During my second maternity leave, they'd moved to like southwest London. I live in Hertfordshire. Like it had all just got a lot more difficult. I was managing a team of people, but I had two very small humans at home, and I was getting zero sleep at that point. Both of my children were terrible sleepers. And I just knew I didn't have it in me to go back to a job that big. I mean, it was an SME. It wasn't like a massive company, but it was a growing business. And as I said, I had a team of HR people, and it was a much, much bigger job. So I decided to find something more locally. And then I started working for a local accountancy practice. And effectively, I was like their in-house HR consultant. So I would do HR support for clients kind of as and when. So sometimes it was really busy and really interesting. But then there were other times that it was so unbelievably boring because, like, if there wasn't HR stuff coming up, I was almost just sat there. And it's funny because I remember talking to someone of like, oh, I'd love to be bored in my job. And I was like, try it. Try it. Because I honestly felt like my brain was kind of atrophying and all my skills, I could sort of almost feel them like draining out of my body because I just never got to practice or use my knowledge like enough. So that was all kind of going on in the background. Then COVID happened, as I said, and all of a sudden everybody needed me again. And I was super busy, super like the go-to person that everybody was coming to. I mean, to the point that sometimes I was like, guys, I don't actually have a direct line to number 10. I wish I did. I wish I knew what this furlough malarkey was all about, but like I sort of had become, I was constantly reading all the news reports. I was constantly having to update people with all the furlough scheme, et cetera, et cetera. So I suddenly had this like, oh, this is what it's like to be busy and useful and using my knowledge. So yeah, we had a year, didn't we, of like in and out of lockdowns, and I was working from home. My kids at that point, the youngest was in like preschool, the eldest was just in sort of early years, like I think she was in year 1 when we first went into lockdown. So they were really little, they weren't
Yeah.
they weren't babies, but they weren't the like I had to be in the lounge, working. I couldn't leave them to sit on their iPads in their rooms all day, et cetera, et cetera. Like they were very present in my day to day. And I just realized that basically like the job, I liked the people and I liked the hours because it was part-time around school and stuff. But like once all that disappeared, I was like, I've never liked this job. I've never. I mean, I just sort of had this glaring realization of like they were like, we want you back in the office, we want you doing this again, we want you doing that again, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So it was just one of those things that at the time, my now ex-husband, but he was self-employed on a very good daily rate, and my income was effectively covering the costs of like preschool, and that was basically it. So it just was kind of like, I'm really unhappy. I could see there was this opportunity, as I said, that like I effectively was an in-house HR consultant for another business. I was like, I don't need them. I could find my own clients and do work that I'm much more interested in and is much more useful. So, yeah, as you said in my intro, I am not the proponent of like super planned out, did a year of savings and blah, blah, blah. It was like, nope. I decided, I told them in December, I said, I'll officially hand my notice in January and then I'll leave 1st of Feb. Well, listeners, you may or may not remember, but I remember because it's ingrained on my stone cold heart, that the day that I was due to start my handover and start recruiting for my replacement in that job was the day we went back into lockdown and they said the
Mhm.
schools weren't going back. So
Yeah.
that was one of the worst months of my life. But I did it. I found my replacement. I handed it over. And then, yeah, it was like, I'm done. So that was sort of what started me on my journey. And yeah, and then once the kids went back to school in March, I set up my Instagram page. I started actively kind of promoting myself. And then I just, through several, happy accidents, but also, I suppose a bit of grafting, I got involved with a really big internal employee relations issue with a friend's business that I'd been doing bits and bobs for before, but this became like a really big thing. They were effectively sort of became my first proper client. And then I was posting, as I said, on Instagram, etc. And a friend of mine messaged me and said, "Oh, we don't have HR at the moment. You should have a meeting with our CEO." And lo and behold, 4 years later, they're still my biggest one-to-one client. So it's just kind of, yeah, sort of serendipity, hard work, luck, all of it just mixed in. And that's what I wanted to sort of say, that like I totally respect people who have that vision board all planned out, or they have this like massive financial runway organized, like amazing, well done. But like that, that was not my experience, unfortunately. But I still believe that, yeah, you can make it happen even if you're not 100% clear on like what the future actually holds. It doesn't mean you can't try.